اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. 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 اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد سيد المرسلين وخاتم النبيين وحجة رب العالمين المنتجب في الميثاق المصطفى في الظلال المطهر من كل آفات البريء من كل عين المؤمل للنجاة المرتجى للشفاعة المفوض إليه دين الله. اللهم شرف بنيانه وعظم برهانه وأفلج حجته وارفع درجته وأضئ نوره وبيض وجهه وأعطه الفضل والفضيلة والمنزلة والوسيلة والدرجة الرفيعة وابعثه مقاما محمودا يغبطه به الأولون والآخرون. وصل على أمير المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وقائد الغر المحجلين وسيد الوصيين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على الحسن بن علي إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على الحسين بن علي إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على علي بن الحسين إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على محمد بن علي إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على جعفر بن محمد إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على موسى بن جعفر إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على علي بن موسى إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على محمد بن علي إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على علي بن محمد إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على الحسن بن علي إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. وصل على الخلف الهادي المهدي إمام المؤمنين ووارث المرسلين وحجة رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وأهل بيته الأئمة الهادين العلماء الصادقين الأبرار المتقين دعائم دينك وأركان توحيدك وتراجمة وحيك وحججك على خلقك وخلفائك في أرضك الذين اخترتهم لنفسك واصطفيتهم على عبادك وارتضيتهم لدينك وخصصتهم بمعرفتك وجللتهم بكرامتك وغشيتهم برحمتك وربيتهم بنعمتك وغذيتهم بحكمتك وألبستهم نورك ورفعتهم في ملكوتك وحففتهم بملائكتك وشرفتهم بنبيك صلواتك عليه وآله. اللهم صل على محمد وعليهم صلاة زاكية نامية كثيرة دائمة طيبة لا يحيط بها إلا أنت ولا يسعها إلا علمك ولا يحصيها أحد غيرك. اللهم وصل على وليك المحيي سنتك القائم بأمرك الداعي إليك الدليل عليك حجتك على خلقك وخليفتك في أرضك وشاهدك على عبادك. اللهم أعز نصره ومد في عمره وزين الأرض بطول بقائه. اللهم اكفه بغي الحاسدين وأعذه من شر الكائدين وازجر عنه إرادة الظالمين وخلصه من أيدي الجبارين. اللهم أعطه في نفسه وذريته وشيعته ورعيته وخاصته وعامته وعدوه وجميع أهل الدنيا ما تقر به عيناه وتسر به نفسه، وبلغه أفضل ما أمله في الدنيا والآخرة، إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم جدد به ما امتحى من دينك، وأحي به ما بدل من كتابك، وأظهر به ما غير من حكمك، حتى يعود دينك به وعلى يديه غضا جديدا خالصا مخلصا، لا شك فيه ولا شبهة معه، ولا باطل عنده ولا بدعة لديه. اللهم نور بنوره كل ظلمة، وهد بركنه كل بدعة، واهدم بعزه كل ضلالة، واقصم به كل جبار، وأخمد بسيفه كل نار، وأهلك بعدله جور كل جائر، وأجر حكمه على كل حكم، وأذل بسلطانه كل سلطان. اللهم أذل كل من ناواه، وأهلك كل من عاداه، وامكر بمن كاده، واستأصل من جحده حقه، واستهان بأمره، وسعى في إطفاء نوره، وأراد إخماد ذكره. اللهم صل على محمد المصطفى، وعلي المرتضى، وفاطمة الزهراء، والحسن الرضا، والحسين المصفى، وجميع الأنصياء، مصابيح الدجى، وأعلام الهدى، ومنار التقى، والعروة الوثقى، والحبل المتين، والصراط المستقيم. وصل على وليك وولاة عهدك والأئمة من ولدك، ومد في أعمارهم، وزد في آجالهم، وبلغهم أقصى آمالهم، دينا ودنيا وآخرة، إنك على كل شيء قدير.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
البريء من كل عين، المؤمل للنجاة، المرتجى للشفاعة، المفوض إليه دين الله. اللهم شرف بنيانه
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. محمد رسول الله والذين معه أشداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم. محمد رسول الله والذين معه أشداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم. تراهم ركعا سجدا يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا. محمد رسول الله والذين معه وشداء على الكفار رحماء بينهم تراهم ركعا سجدا يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا سيماهم في وجوههم من أثر السجود ذلك مثلهم في التوراة ومثلهم في الإنجيل كزرع أخرج شطأه فآزره فاستغلظ فاستوى على سوقه يعجب الضراء يعجب الضراء ليغيظ بهم الكفار وعملوا الصالحات منهم الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات منهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما صدق الله العلي العظيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. به نام الله رحمتگر مهربان اوست. کسی که پیامبر خود را به قصد هدایت با آیین درست روانه ساخت تا آن را بر تمام ادیان پیروز گرداند و گواه بودن خدا کفایت می کند. محمد پیامبر خداست و کسانی که با اویند بر کافران سختگیر و با همدیگر مهربانند. آنان را در رکوع و سجود می‌بینی، فضل و خوشنودی خدا را خواستارند. علامت مشخصه آنان بر اثر سجود در چهره‌هایشان هست. این صفت ایشان است در تورات. و مثل آنها در انجیل چون کشته است که جوانه خود برآورد و آن را مایه دهد تا ستبر شود و بر ساقه‌های خود بایستد و دهقانان را به شگفت آورد تا از انبوهی آنان خدا کافران را به خشم در اندازد. خدا به کسانی که از آنان ایمان آورده و کارهای شایسته کردند آمرزش و پاداش بزرگی وعده داده است. It is he who has sent his apostle with guidance and the true religion, that he may make it prevail over all religions. And Allah suffixes as witness. Muhammad, the apostle of Allah, and those who are with him are hard against the faithless and merciful amongst themselves. You see them bowing and prostrating in worship, seeking Allah's grace and His pleasure. Their mark is visible on their faces from the effect of protection. Such is their description in the Torah and their description in the Evangel. Like a tillage that sends out these shoots and builds them up, and they grew stout and still on their stalks, impressing the sowers so that many enrage the faithless by them. Allah has promised those of them who have faith and the righteous these deeds forgiveness and a great reward. بر محمد آل محمد صلوات.
سلام علیکم دوستان عزیز، خواهران و برادران. خیلی خوشحالیم که در خدمت شما هستیم. جمعه دیگر ما 3 مناسبت دینی و این هفته داریم. شهادت امام رضا علیه السلام، شهادت امام حسن علیه السلام و رحلت پیامبر بزرگ اسلام. خیلی خوشحال هستیم که امروز در خدمت آقای دکتر سیروس زرگر هستیم. محبت فرمودن و دعوت ما رو پذیرفتن که برای ما راجع به کتابشون صحبت کنن. ایشون حالا معرفیشون رو براتون میخونم، اما اجمالاً کتاب‌های و مقالات متعددی چاپ کردن. 2 کتاب اخیراً چاپ کردن خیلی جالبه. یک کتابی که در واقع موضوع جلسه امروز هست اسمش هست The Ethics of Karbala، یعنی اخلاق کربلا به انگلیسی. کتاب دانشگاهی آکادمیک هست و همونطور که شاید بدونیم ما کتاب‌های زیادی به صورت دانشگاهی آکادمیک به زبان انگلیسی در مورد کربلا خصوصاً با اپروچ اخلاقی نداره. صدای من بله. و در واقع کتاب ایشون خیلی از جهت مختنم هست و ما درخواست کردیم ازشون که بیاد راجع به کتابشون برای ما صحبت کنه. ایشون به انگلیسی ارائه خواهند داد. من معرفی ایشونم مختصراً برای شما به فارسی بگم، بعد به انگلیسی حرف هامو ان شاءالله تکرار خواهم کرد. آقای دکتر سیروس علی زرگر، بله، استاد برجسته کرسی غزالی شناسی هستند در دانشگاه سنترال فلوریدا. ایشون پی اچ دی شون رو از دانشگاه برکلی، یونیورسیتی آف کالیفرنیا برکلی، در مطالعات خاورمیانه گرفتند و تخصص اصلیشون در مورد در واقع تصوف کلاسیک، فلسفه اسلامی، ادبیات عرفانی به زبان عربی و فارسی و همچنین مطالعات مربوط به اخلاق و ادبیات و فیلم هستش. حالا من مختصراً به انگلیسی هم معرفی میکنم، ایشون بعد در خدمت ایشون خواهیم بود. So we are very glad and happy to be here again together to commemorate 3 religious anniversaries. The passing away of our beloved our beloved Prophet Rasulullah and the martyrdom of two of our Imams, Imam Hassan ibn Ali, the second Imam, and also Imam Rida alayhi salam, the eighth Imam. We are very glad and happy to have Dr. Cyrus Zargar as our guest speaker, special guest speaker. So Dr. Cyrus Ali Zargar got his PhD from the University of California, Berkeley in Near Eastern Studies in 2018. He is the endowed Al-Ghazali Distinguished Professor in Islamic Studies right now in the University of Central Florida. And he has published numerous articles and books. Two recent books he has published. One of them is The Ethics of Karbala, which is the topic of today, our discussion today. And the other one is about the mysticism, Irfan of Attar, the famous Persian poet. So as I said, we are happy to have him here today to discuss his book, The Ethics of Karbala. So as you might know, there are not many books, many works on Karbala in English, academic works, especially from a moral point of view. So this is going to be a valuable discussion for all of us, and we look forward to Dr. Zargar's lecture, and he's going to dedicate a couple of minutes to questions and answers. Please, if you have any questions about the topic, don't hesitate to raise your questions at the Q&A section. Okay, I'm going to invite him to start his lecture, and please recite a salawat for Dr. Zargar's health and success. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil faraj. آقای دکتر خیلی ممنون از انتظارتون. الان میتونین سخنرانیتون رو شروع بفرمایید.
اوکی، خیلی ممنون. Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So با اجازهتون انگلیسی صحبت میکنم. What I want to offer in the next 25 minutes, followed hopefully by some questions and a discussion, is just a brief summary of the arguments that I make in the Ethics of Karbala. So, first of all, if we take the word ethics just to mean practical philosophy, moral living, I don't think that there's too much to say that's new about the Karbala narrative, about the story of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. After all, globally in Persian, Arabic, Urdu, English, any language that Muslims speak, you can find books, sermons, poems that illustrate the significance of Imam Hussein's stand at Karbala. I mean ethics in a different sort of way that I'll get into. I mean ethics in the tradition of virtue ethics as actual character traits. And I want to think about one specific character trait, karam, nobility, that I think is a core part of the message of Karbala and a motivator of the actions that we see there. So a bit of background into who I am and why I wrote the book. So I was born and raised here in the United States. And I'm of an age where the heroes that we were presented with growing up in popular media, and by the way, don't dismiss popular media. It's very important. It does shape the values that many of us have. That's why it's popular. The heroes that we had were actually a little bit different than what you see today. Somewhat the same, but that was a time of sort of hyper-masculinity. It was the Stallone, Schwarzenegger era. Most films and even cartoons put combat soldiers, that sort of thing, it propelled it in a certain position. Things have changed somewhat since then. But when I think about that, and in fact, in part of the book, I discuss the interest in superheroes and superhero narratives. When I think about that, I have to wonder, fiction aside, are the virtues that are presented to young men and women in popular culture, the heroes that are given to them, are they similar or different? And how are they meaningfully similar and different from what we see at Karbala? Okay, so that's the first question I'll ask, and we'll get to that. I'll get to that as we move on. The second thing I'd like to get to today is the way we think about issues, the way we make what we might call the way we conduct moral reasoning. Okay, and I think this part can be a bit controversial. I don't mean it to be. I think it's somewhat obvious, but time and time again in the Karbala narrative, I see the sorts of decisions that are being made as being propelled by a certain reasoning that falls within virtue, the virtue of nobility, karam, and not what we would call abiding by some sort of like guiding principles or laws or that sort of thing. And I bring up examples in the book, but hopefully I can get to one or two of them today. So let's start here. And I'm going to begin by quoting from a Hanafi scholar, Al-Muwaffaq ibn Ahmad al-Kharizmi. And he has his own Maqtal al-Hussein. And one of the interesting things when I was researching the book is, the wealth of Sunni resources on Imam Hussein. I mean, very often the Sunni books on Imam Hussein in the pre-modern era are far superior to what you can find in the Shi'i tradition, or the Shi'i tradition is borrowing from them. I kid you not. Even Shi'i scholars that I admire, like Faiza Kashani, his account of Imam Hussein, he borrows it from someone who has borrowed it from someone who is a Sunni author. And of course we know the Kashifis, what we get the Rosé from Rosé Shohada from his book. Okay, so this report comes to us from this Al-Muwaffaq al-Kharizmi, the Hanafi scholar. He says, قيل كان مكتوبا على سيف الحسين عليه السلام البخيل مذموم والحريص محروم والحسود مغموم. So, it was inscribed upon the sword, he says, of Imam Hussein, peace be upon him. The stingy one, al-bakhil, is blameworthy, ever blameworthy, madmoom. The covetous one, the haris, is mahroom, ever deprived, always deprived. And the envious person, al-hasud, maghmoom, always afflicted, ever afflicted. Okay? In other words, if you suffer from stinginess, from covetousness, from envy, those vices put you in a constant state of blame, feelings of deprivation, feelings of sorrow. But the interesting thing is that this is said to be kana maktuban ala Sayf al-Hussein alayhi salam. That is, it's described upon the sword. Now, I have no interest or business really telling you that this is or is not historically accurate. I don't think it matters very much. What I want to do is say, why this? Of all the things that would be written on the sword of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, why this? And why is the author so interested in it? If you think about the way we talk about the narrative of Karbala today, you would imagine if anything were to be written on the sword of Imam Hussein, it would either have to do with Tawheed or justice, right? But you'll notice what's written is rather a declaration against vice. Why? Because so often in Karbala narratives that we have, Imam Hussein is the embodiment of all virtue. And by the way, all virtue, when you put them together, not according to me, according to these early authors, including Faiz Kashani, is karam. You take all of the virtues and you put them together, you want to have one thing that describes them, that's karam, that's nobility. So, and by the way, thinking about karam, we call the person who's karam, as you know, kareem. And kareem means generous, but generosity in these contexts is a function or a sign of one's nobility. And that's why nobility is kind of the root cause of other things. And one might say, well, what about like taqwa? Isn't taqwa more important than karam? Well, it depends on how you look at it. I would say in these models, in these virtue models, taqwa too is a function of karam, because the noble person always is always doing right by others, and your right vis-a-vis God is taqwa, piety, how they usually translate it, they usually call it God-wariness, being aware of God and monitoring your actions thereby. So the person who doesn't have karam, who has these vices, they're ultimately unhappy. That's true. But you'll notice they're also fundamentally not free. And karam is tied to a kind of freedom. Now, first of all, the word karam has to do with freedom. It's very often linked to a word hur or ahrar, being the plural, free men, free people. Because the nobility is something that belongs to those who come from good backgrounds, who come from good families. That's the traditional Arab model. And those who do not tend not to be free. I know this runs counter to our egalitarian way of looking at things, but this is how they saw it. So, for example, I'll give you an example from the narrative of Imam Hussein. There's a point at the end of the narrative where Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he's standing there and he knows that he'll be gone. And he's worried about his, what we would say, the women folk, the ladies and the children who will be left after him. And the attack that they'll do on the tents. And we know this narrative from the Sham al-Ghariban accounts that we know. And look at what he says to them. He says, woe unto you. If you have no religion, if you have no deen, and you don't fear the day of the return, if you don't fear, what we call in Persian, hisab or kitab, then at least in your worldly affairs, be free men of noble traits. فَكُونُوا فِي أَمْرِ دُنْيَاكُمْ أَحْرَارًا ذَوِي أَحْسَابٍ. Be ahraran, people who have ahsab. Safeguard my camp and my family from the cruel and dissolute among you. In other words, let's say you're not driven by piety. Let's say you have no fear of the day of judgment. Well, at least you're Arabs, aren't you? Aren't you Arabs? Aren't you good, noble Arabs? At least behave like Arabian warriors did before Islam. And know that actions like attacking tents and letting some among you attack the tents and pillage and all that, you should at least not allow that. Again, it is karam here. Karam is not named. But actually this ahrar and dhawi ahsab is like synonymous with karam. I'm interested in the way that this karam has a freeing effect, a liberating effect. So if you look at the camp of Imam Hussein, well, the most obvious example is, of course, the man named Al-Hur, right? When he finally, I'm assuming everyone knows all these narratives. I don't know who's in the audience. I don't see you. You see me. I'm assuming you all are, old souls when it comes to the story of Imam Hussein. So forgive me if I skip things. But I won't retell the story of Al-Hur. But in summary, Al-Hur was the general of the other side, of the opposing camp. He's actually the reason they're cornered in Karbala. And as you know, up until the end, he's wavering. On the day of Ashura, he becomes a supporter of Imam Hussein, and it's there that Imam Hussein says, "Now you are hur, like your mother named you. Now you are free. Free from what? Free from what? Because acting like a free man is, yes, certainly a kind of nobility, but it also means being cut off from these sources of imperial power that take away or limit your nobility, so that there's an ultimate freedom. Every single person in Imam Hussein's camp is there acting freely. There's no compulsion in what they do. In fact, as we know famously, he invites them to leave the night before and on numerous occasions, right? So it's freedom, and it's a kind of moral freedom that's tied into Karam. But, by the way, you see this in the Mediterranean Greco-Roman tradition as well. When we say the liberal arts, liberal means free. Why do we call it the liberal arts? Because it's different than the technical arts. Technical arts are what craftspeople lower on the rungs of society would study. The elites who are wealthy, they study the liberal arts, philosophy, political science, whatever, mathematics. These are all branches of philosophy. I'm trying to think of something other than philosophy that they study, but whatever. So this model of, the elites who are noble and who are free, we might not love it. It doesn't fit with our kind of democratic sensibilities, I know. But what it does do is it gives us a moral language. It's not to say that we should go back in time and recreate some sort of, stratified, society where there's some are more noble than others. No. But it's where we derive our conceptions of nobility from. Now let's talk about someone who isn't free. And I bring this up in the book. I'm sort of giving you the whole book in summary form, in different parts. Someone who isn't free, for example, you could pick almost anyone from the camp of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad and Umar ibn Sa'd, the enemy opposing camps, the enemy to Imam Hussein. But let's look at how they are tied down to that which strips them of their nobility. So the Kufan Sinan ibn Anas is mentioned in Al-Tabari as the murderer, the actual person who carried out the murder of Imam Hussein. It's famously shimmer in most of the speeches we hear, but in this source it's said to be in Tabari it's said to be Sinan. And what Sinan says after he kills and severs the head from Imam Hussein alayhi salam is, "Weigh down my mount with silver and gold." You imagine if you have like a camel or a horse and it has these packs on the side, these pockets on the side. Weigh it down with silver and with gold, for I murdered the king, the best of humanity, best in terms of both mother and father. So he's saying very clearly that for monetary reward, I've acted against what's noble and good. This shows a lack of freedom. Or let's be even more direct. Look at the famous account of the Abdullah al-Radi, or what's called Ali al-Asghar, the infant, the suckling babe in Imam Hussein's camp. Now, if you look at the historic accounts, when Imam Hussein alayhi salam brings the baby out and shows it to the camp, many people's hearts are turned and they want to give water to the baby. But if you read the accounts, one of the things that's said fascinatingly to me, which I didn't know this until I read it, was one of the issues that they have is they cannot get approval to give water to this baby from Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, because Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad is in Kufa. He's far. He's not on the battlefield. The real kind of mastermind of this is removed. And then the mastermind of that, Yazid, is even further removed. What are you seeing here? You're seeing the imperial model of warfare, which, by the way, will eventually lead to modern styles of warfare, which, by the way, is what in those 80s movies I was mentioning, or I can even give you better film examples, but I don't know how much you want to get into films, is a very different kind of warfare. and is a lot more about dominance and a lot more about hierarchy and a lot more about patriarchy than Imam Hussein's model of warfare, where he's on the battlefield with them. He watches them. He's giving his own life. His sons are there. They see him and they're fighting for him. They know him, he knows them. This is a tribal and ancient style of warfare in which the warrior ethos that I'm describing, which I call a warrior nobility, Karam on the battlefield, thrives. Okay? So you'll see, they're not free. Even if they want to give water to that baby, the real commander isn't even present. Out of fear, they have to act. It's like as if they are automatons, machines. They are like the people who command drones. The person who commands drones isn't there. They don't deal with that person. They can't show mercy. They can't show anger. They're unaffected. So to them. Okay. So now compare that to the epitome for me of the opposite would be Al-Abbas ibn Ali, Imam Hussein's brother, his loyal brother. Think about how he is killed. He's going to get water for children. There is not a more caring act than that. He's completely free. So much so that he wants to do this no matter what. Even if they cut off his arms, he still wants to do it. It's completely willed, and he's completely free. And his nobility shines in that moment, but it's a kind of nobility that expresses itself through a care, an ethics of care, almost maternal, really, the kind of love and care that Al-Abbas has. And he is involved personally. With his hands, he goes to the water. With his hands, he picks it up, and his hands are what get cut off. Think about the killer of the baby, famously Harmala. How does he act? He's at a distance, bow and arrow. He's not involved. He's removed. Okay? I'm going to stop there for a second because I haven't been paying attention to the time. How much more time do I have? Can someone tell me?
So, Doctor, you can talk for 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes. I will wrap it up in 10 minutes. I'll wrap it up in 10 minutes. Okay. I won't give you too much more. In fact, there's a lot more I wanted to say. But maybe it'll come out of the question and answer. Let me actually summarize it in 5 minutes so that we have enough time to talk. I don't know what time Namaz al-Maghrib is over there, but here we're getting pretty close. So I'll wrap it up. Okay. So let me give you one final example of the karam that I speak of. This is a famous account. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, this is before the Battle of Karbala. He's still in Medina. And Yazid at this point has hope that he can compel Imam Hussein alayhi salam to give him a bay'ah, pledge his allegiance to him. And so he sends Walid to get this bay'ah from him. And Imam Hussein famously has a response to Walid. He says, Ayyuha al-Amir, O Walid, O Amir, O commander of Medina, Inna Ahlul Baytin Nubuwah. We are the household of prophecy. Wa ma'adin al-Rasala. We are the treasure trove of divine messengership. Wa mukhtalaful malaika. We are the location of the coming and going of angels. Wa bina fatah Allah. God opens through us. Wa bina khatam Allah. God closes through us. Wa Yazid rajulun fasiqun sharibul khamr. Qatilun nafs al-muharrama. Yazid, on the other hand, this is a fasiq man. This is a transgressing man, an imbiber of wine. Sharibul khamr. Qatilun nafs al-muharrama. He's a killer of the forbidden soul. Mu'linun bil fisq. This is important. Mu'linun bil fisq meaning he is overt in his transgressions. He does them publicly. Muawiyah did them privately for the most part. ليس له هذه المنزلة. This manzala, this status does not belong to him. ومثلي لا يبيع مثله. ومثلي لا يبيع مثله. Someone like me never cannot pledge allegiance to someone like him. Why does he say this? The reason why he says this, in my opinion, is he's talking about himself as a moral model. Mithli, someone like me. I belong to a moral elite. People will base their actions on my actions. They will know karam from my karam. And therefore, I cannot pledge allegiance to someone who openly and brazenly opposes all the structures of what we have established as what is nobility, right? The fact that he's Sharab al-Khamr, it doesn't just mean that he's a sinner. Look at the sin. What's wrong with Sharab al-Khamr? It means he obeys his passions. Yazid is a man who obeys his passions. In obeying his passions, he doesn't make wise decisions. This leads him to become an unjust person, a murderer of the innocent. All of this comes from Sharab al-Khamr. He does things openly and brazenly. He doesn't see them as evil. Okay? So, to me, and I'll end on this, I promise. This is my last. These will be my last 25 words, inshallah. Imam Hussein's karam as something worthy of imitation it actually guides those around him so that they know what to do in a given situation. Whereas, I'm going to be frank with you, the contemporary Shi'i model that I follow too is to write to your marja or look in a book of fiqh, which is fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But that's like a ChatGPT modeling, a sort of imitation of what in its origins was acting by intuitive action based on the karam that's embodied by these great souls. Thank you. And I take your questions now. If you want, you can type them in the chat since you guys seem to have an echo problem. But if you have any questions, please throw them my way. Oh, that's okay. I'm done. That's okay. It's a good time for questions. I mean, I think you guys get the main message, the point. So I've given you some key ideas. There's more to say, of course, but.
Can you hear me, Dr. Zargar? Can you hear me, Dr. Zargar?
Do you want me to mute myself here? Maybe this will help.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. I can hear you.
Sorry. We are trying to fix the technical issue here. We have
Was it echoing like this the whole time I spoke? I hope I didn't sound like this.
Can you use your microphone? Okay. No, but again, we have to.
Why don't you guys just type your messages?
Do we have to go? Yes. دوستان عزیز ببخشید ما نمیتونیم به صورت صوتی از ایشون سوال بکنیم، اما اگه شما سوال دارید ما میتونیم سوالتون رو اینجا تایپ بکنیم، ایشون صوتی جواب بدن. For some reason, technical issue problem, we cannot, audience cannot ask their questions orally, but if you ask your questions, I can type them in, and then Dr. Zargar can read the questions and answer orally. So if you have any question, please let me know. اگه سوالی دارین بفرمایید، من میتونم ترجمه هم بکنم سوالتون رو به انگلیسی. Oh, good question. Okay. بهتر شد؟ Testing. So I think the echo issue is solved now. Dr. Zargar, do you hear me?
I do.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask the question. When you're gonna answer it, friends here gonna open the speaker again. So one question we received from audience is that, what do you exactly mean by ethics? The ethics of Karbala, what dimension of ethics? If you could elaborate on it.
So, yeah, it's a great question. So the word ethics comes to us as originally a plural of ethos, and it refers to, in its earliest instances, before we had the kinds of moral philosophy that the Enlightenment philosophers did, there really only was one type of ethics, and that is the ethics that is famously associated with Aristotle, the study of human character traits. And that's what I mean. And I'm interested in human character traits, akhlaq, khulq. And, akhlaq به معنی جمع خلق. And the khulq, that to me is it's represented by Karbala. What I mean by Karbala, I mean the battle of Karbala, is karam, nobility. But it's specifically what I call a warrior nobility, because that's what I see as being, as missing in contemporary societies influenced by late capitalism. So the warrior ethos, the khulq that belongs to the noble warrior, is to me what we need, and we get it through narratives, and the best narrative is the narrative of Karbala.
Thank you so much. So another question is that what is the relation between freedom and nobility, or آزادگی و کرم? So is it a two-way relationship? So for example, the more free you are, the nobler you can be, and the nobler you can be, the more free you get from different restrictions and قيود. So what is the relation between freedom and nobility?
That's a great question.
Which one is prior, or I mean, it's not that one of them is prior, but both go hand in hand.
Oh, we're echoing. Okay, that's a great question. So, Karam is a clearer, more defined, and more discussed virtue than, al-hurriya, being free. The problem with freedom is, it could just mean being unencumbered, unbounded, not restricted. But that's not what it means in this context. The relationship between them is that the nobleman always acts freely, even when he does things that are unpleasant to him. He does them freely. He's not compelled by his passions. He's not compelled by any kind of, servitude to someone else, especially to someone who might be paying that person. So you can certainly the free and noble man could work for someone, but they would never, for example, take money to do something that went against their nobility. You've seen this. It's the classic setup. Would you accept $1 million to do X? Right? Would you accept $1 million to do X? Now, if X is something that goes against what the noble person believes to be noble, the noble person will never say yes. They just won't. They can't. They're in a way unable to because of their nobility. You can see this in real life. I've seen it. So that's how they're connected. They're also connected in that, as I said, traditionally, those who were free tended to be noble, and those who were ignoble tended not to be free. They tended to be serfs, enslaved. And I know it's wrong to say that in a contemporary context, but that's how these pre-modern contexts were.
شما آقای ماردی جوابتون رو گرفتین، جواب سوالتون رو؟ بله، اگه سوال دیگه هست دوستان، any other question you have, Brother Abbas, do you want to use the mic? So would you do something for me? I mean, talk both to the mic and to this cell phone because of the echo problem. So this is for audience, this is for our speaker.
So I'll ask it twice.
No, you can speak right now.
I was wondering if you could elaborate on the last point you were making, that having any religious question and just asking the marja to get the answer to that question, maybe without critical thinking, is like a chat GPT model. And can you elaborate on that point a little bit? Because I think you said it quickly. I thought it was an interesting point.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. First of all, alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Second of all, that's a really great question. I'm so glad you asked it. Look, this is the part of my writing that is kind of new to me and I'm interested in, and I don't want to go too far because I'm not really a student much of Islamic jurisprudence, fiqh, so to speak. But from what I see in these first texts, there's a kind of moral reasoning that goes on around Imam Hussein that is different from what we engage in today. It doesn't mean that we can do what they did. The kind of moral reasoning that we have to engage in, which, especially if it's taqlidi, isn't really reasoning at all, we do because of a lack of knowledge, which is fine. When you don't have knowledge, then you follow a map. When you don't have knowledge, you follow instructions. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's important to recognize the difference. I'll give you one quick example. Okay. There's a point in the pre-Karbala narrative, and you guys, I'm sure many of you guys already know this story, but I'll repeat it. There's a point where Muslim ibn Aqil has the opportunity to kill Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. And he can do it because he's in Hani's house, as is Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, and he's hidden. And Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad does not know he's there. Now, if a Muslim had killed Ubaydullah, I mean, the whole story ends, I think. He saves not just Imam Hussein's life, I mean, it's like everybody's, including his own, including Hani's. The whole narrative changes if he just kills him. He would have to kill him sort of like an assassination, secretly. Ubaydullah comes, Ubaydullah sits, Ubaydullah is in Hani's house, and then he leaves. And Muslim doesn't do it. Now, my question to you is this. Is Muslim acting according to Islamic law when he does this? Or is he living up to a standard of nobility? And when I look at Muslims' language, I see him as saying, as he remembers a hadith of the Prophet, where the Prophet says the believer does not kill furtively. The believer doesn't kill secretly. Which I interpret to mean it is not befitting for the believer to kill furtively. And he also says, I knew that Hani wouldn't have wanted me to kill him in his house. He's my host, I'm his guest, Ubaydullah is his guest, he didn't want it to happen in his house. That means he's abiding by the virtue of hospitality, Arabic hospitality. Which, to me, when I put all of it together, shows me that the way Muslim deals with this situation is he thinks about who he is as a noble Muslim mu'min man. And based on that, he's presented with the situation, and based on that, he determines his actions. Now, I'm not saying that you and I have access to that, and that we can therefore forego taqlid. No. What I'm saying is that what he didn't do is say that in all instances, it is always wrong to kill someone secretly. It is haram, that is the law, and I must abide by the law. None of his language suggests that, and the way he makes the reasoning doesn't suggest that at all either. They're not dealing with fixed laws. They're dealing with in-the-moment decisions based on what a noble person does when put in that decision. So when Imam Hassan is in a position with Muawiyah, he makes a certain decision, and when Imam Hussein is in that same position, now with Yazid, he makes a different decision because mithlu la yubay'u mithla. I can't do that. I can't do such a thing. It goes against my nobility. I hope that helps.
If I may, I want to comment on this point from a Shiite perspective. So, you know, Dr. Zargar, that according to Shiite standard view, one of the sources of Sharia is our reason, our own reason. So if you, for example, as a follower of a marja, know by the clear judgment of your reason that act A is immoral, is vicious, right? You don't need to go and ask your marja. Yeah? I mean it's just what God wants from you. I mean, he has put two sources of guidance. The inner source, which is reason, and the outer source, which is Sharia, what came from the Quran and Hadith. And they are complementary. And even the marja would refer to his reason, to their reason, when they're trying to issue a hukm, right? See what their reason says.
their reason has a clear judgment on some issue, then they will, I mean, say that is what God, that is Sharia. Right, one of the sources of Sharia is a reason.
That is a great point.
Yeah, and this is what other sects of Islam disagreed with the Shia, for example, Ash'ari have a different view. But the Shia standard view is quite rational.
Yes, it is. And I'm really glad you said that. That has to be made clear. And a lot of what we include in Sharia is stuff also that we can't base on our use our own sense of nobility, even if we have one, to determine how much of your foot has to be included when you wipe in wudu. How many rak'ahs is this? How many? I mean, Sharia deals with so many things, right? That a lot of it can't be determined that way, anyways, right? So certainly, you're right. I hope it doesn't sound like in any way I'm belittling the work of fiqh and usul fiqh, and these are really what's preserved nobility, right? Because we know nobility from the outside in, from the legacy of what's left, which is Sharia. If we didn't have it, then we would end up looking like everyone else. The fact that we have Sharia and we've maintained the outside allows the inside to last through 2024. I 100% agree. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm disagreeing, but I will say that sometimes we have allowed Islamic legalistic thinking to affect our reading of history. So I have seen accounts of Muslim Ibn Aqil or even Imam Hussein alayhi salam, where it makes it sound like there is some kind of jurisprudential law that they're trying to follow when they're making these decisions, but it's clear when you read the text that there's not. We create the law. We have these laws so that we can best preserve what we imagine to be their nobility. That's what I meant by the ChatGPT kind of reproduction. It's a reproduction. It's an imitation that we have. If we're fooling ourselves if we say that what we have when we practice Sharia is exactly the lifestyle and way of the Ahlul Bayt. It's not. It's a best guess. It's a best guess, obviously. I mean, I'm saying anybody who studied fiqh would agree with me. It's a best guess, and it's a great guess. It's not just a guess. It's an informed, scholarly, thousands of years tradition guess. So.
Thank you, Dr. Zargar, for the presentation. I have a question. I don't know if anybody else has a question. If not, I ask my own. So my question is that what do you think is the message of Arba'in that is? Do you think is not contained in Ashura itself? I know that there a great portion. There's a big overlap. But what do you think is the message of Arba'in that is not contained in Ashura itself, or what is bringing as extra materials or message to the table besides Ashura?
That is such a lovely question. I'll say that, and then I have to go because it's pretty much time to pray here. My reading of things has been to try to bring it all back to this warrior ethos or warrior nobility, this karam that's embodied by Imam Hussein at Karbala. And I see, let's talk about Our Lady Zainab, Hazrat Zainab, peace be upon her. To me, she embodies the warrior ethos as well. And the beauty of Arba'in is that it allows us to see what the warrior ethos looks like when you're not at war. It allows us to see what this karam of bravery, this kind of special karam, that high stakes karam, let's call it that. You could call the warrior nobility high stakes karam. you see what it looks like in a moment of peace. That's what I say in the last chapter of the book. And her actions show the same bravery as Imam Hussein and Imam Ali alayhi salam. They show all of those things, but in a different context. Because if you want to understand anything, whether a virtue or anything else, you want to see it in as many different contexts as possible. The context of Karbala is the context of war. The context of Arba'in, the court at Damascus and going back for ziyarah and all of that, that's a context of peace but also injustice, right? It's not war, but I wouldn't call it peace. It's outside of war. It's a context of oppression. By the way, Tahira Qutbuddin has written, I can't remember the book's name, but she has a beautiful book on Islamic sermons where I'm drawing from her work actually on this. Because she focuses on Hazrat Zainab's language, on the way that through her words, she's performing much of the same mission that Imam Hussein had to do with his sword. And why that benefits us is because I hope, like many of you, I hope to live in a society without war. I hope to live in a society where things are peaceful. But that doesn't mean that the warrior ethos will die. It'll look more like that time after Karbala than it will look like the day of Ashura, right? After Ashura as opposed to Ashura. So that's my short answer. And with that, I ask everyone for your du'as. I thank you for your patience, and I seek forgiveness for anything I said that was wrong, outlandish. I'm just testing out ideas. The first thing I say in the book, if you read it, is that it's an essay where I'm exploring an idea. I'm not I'm not anyone who has any kind of authority to tell you anything about Imam Hussein or Karbala, but I just hope that there's some interesting ideas there to work with.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zargar. I'm sorry to have my back to the audience. This is the only way that Dr. Zargar can see my face. So thank you so much for your time, for your knowledge, sharing your knowledge with us. And we look forward to seeing you another occasion in future. صلوات ختم بفرمایید. اللهم صل علی محمد و آل محمد.
سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل. حي على الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وسلم.